You ever get home from a long trip, all you want is to drop your bag, crack a cold drink, and pass out in your own bed, but instead you find a citation duct taped to your front door so aggressively it looks like a crime scene? Yeah, that happened. I'm standing there in the half-dark suitcase still in hand, staring at this HOA violation plastered across my door. $500 fine for excessive noise issued Thursday, 3:17 a.m. Written in angry red letters like Margaret Whitmore herself was about to leap out from behind a bush. At that exact moment, I'm thinking, is this jet lag? Or did I just enter a parallel universe? Because let me tell you, 3:17 a.m., Thursday, I was 30,000 feet over Kansas, flying home from a cybersecurity conference in Seattle. I got the boarding passes, the conference badge, 50 unread emails from the trip. Hell, I got the pretzel packet to prove it. That's when it hit me. Margaret Whitmore had finally snapped. Margaret, the self-appointed iron-fisted supreme commander of the Maple Ridge Estates, HOA. I'd only lived there 8 months, but from day one, she treated me like some kind of single-man biological hazard. Apparently in her universe, a divorced 42-year-old software engineer is public enemy number one for suburban family values. Now Margaret, she ran the HOA like it was a Fortune 500 company, and she was the CEO. 63 gray hair shellacked into a helmet smile, colder than a parking meter in December. She measured fence heights with a laser level, fined the Johnsons because their kids' sidewalk chalk wasn't approved outdoor art, and literally counted the number of flowers in your garden so you didn't offend her odd numbers, only aesthetic. I swear the woman once held a late-night meeting just to pass a motion banning even-numbered petunias. Before ascending to her HOA throne, she'd been a mid-level bank manager booted out after a pile of harassment complaints, but she just redirected that need for control right into Maple Ridge Estates. She even had business cards printed up Margaret Whitmore President and Chief Compliance Officer, as if she was running a multinational instead of a handful of aging cul-de-sacs. Her garage, HOA headquarters. Filing cabinets stuffed with violation records, a whiteboard tracking every neighbor's infractions, color-coded, of course. But if Margaret had a true crusade, it was single men, unattached males. As she'd call us, swearing we attracted unsavory elements and damaged the family-friendly environment. According to her, I was probably running underground poker games out of my basement, jokes on her. My basement was all treadmill and dusty tax returns. So I walk inside, set down my bag, and start gathering evidence. Flight left Seattle at 11:45 p.m., seat 12C, right next to a sweet grandma who spent 5 hours giving me her grandson's entire Little League career, landed at 6:20 a.m. Thursday. Meaning, at 3:17 a.m., the supposed rave at my house, I was watching a flight attendant demo a seatbelt for the millionth time. The more I thought about it, the madder I got. This wasn't about the $500 fine. This was Margaret's need to control everything and everyone, especially people she couldn't slot into her suburban spreadsheet. Last month, she tried to pass a dress code for checking your own mail, claimed men in basketball shorts were corrupting children's morals. Month before that, a curfew for single adults said we were prone to late-night activities. She even floated higher HOA fees for unmarried residents because, and I quote, they use more resources. Don't ask me what those resources were. I pulled up my smart doorbell recordings from that night. Nothing. No visitors, no noise, no lights. My motion sensor showed zero activity between 6 p.m. when my neighbor grabbed my mail and 7 a.m. when the paper hit the driveway. Backyard, same thing. But then right around 3:05 a.m., my camera caught Margaret herself tiptoeing across my lawn with something in her hand. She stood near my window glancing around for almost 4 minutes, then hurried away. At 3:15, there's a sudden blast of heavy metal music, but it's coming from outside right under my window. I zoomed in. She's holding a big portable speaker, the kind you'd see at a kid's birthday party. She set it against my window, blasted music for about 2.5 minutes, and scurried off. She even looked dead into my camera wearing that same navy blazer with President Whitmore stitched on the pocket, thinking she was invisible because it was dark. That was it. I put the footage on a flash drive and marched down to the police station. Officer James Bradley sat through the whole thing with one eyebrow raised. He could barely hide a smirk. "You clearly weren't home. And this," he points at the screen, "this is concerning." He agreed to come with me and pay Margaret a little visit. Margaret opens the door in her official blazer, sees the cop, and immediately launches into this lecture about standards and property values. Her voice had that same tone she used when warning people about lawn heights. Officer Bradley asked to see the complaints. Margaret suddenly admits, all red-faced, that they were just verbal nothing on paper. That's when I pulled out my phone and showed the video, Margaret sneaking across my lawn at 3:05 a.m. Her face went white as chalk. She muttered something about investigating suspicious activity. Officer Bradley calmly points out the citation, says the noise started at 3:17, not 3:05, and then I play the audio, heavy metal blaring crystal clear from outside. Margaret's hands started shaking. She insisted someone else must have done it when I said my other cameras caught nothing. She accused me of tampering with evidence. Officer Bradley asks if she owns a speaker like that. First, she says no, then yes for emergencies, then claims it was stolen last week. But no, she didn't report it stolen because she was too busy with HOA business. And here comes her fatal mistake. She tells Officer Bradley that even if I wasn't home, I'm still responsible for my property and anyone who might have been there. Then she lets it slip that she knew I'd been away at a conference. The air went dead silent. I hadn't told a soul where I was going. When Officer Bradley asks how she knew it was a conference, her story starts unraveling. First she heard it somewhere, then a neighbor mentioned it at the grocery store. Then it was just a lucky guess. It was over. Officer Bradley's voice went stone cold. He told her that filing false complaints is a crime, and her pattern of harassment could easily qualify as stalking. And just like that, Margaret cracked. The professional mask dropped. She started ranting, saying single men ruin neighborhoods, that someone has to maintain order, that I probably throw wild parties when she's not watching. I recorded every second of it on my phone. She went off the rails, even confessed she'd kept track of my travel schedule through a friend at the airline. That was it. Officer Bradley filed a full report, told her to expect criminal charges for harassment, stalking, and filing false police reports. Next few days, I started talking to my neighbors, and man, the floodgates opened. David Park got fined for a broken window while he was deployed overseas. Window never existed. The Andersons were cited for illegally parked cars, except the cars didn't even belong to them. Jennifer Santos, another single resident, got a violation for inappropriate curtains. Her curtains were the same as Margaret's. Then came the Phillips family. Robert and Susan Elderly lived here over 20 years. Margaret fined them $800 for unsightly medical equipment on their porch. The equipment, Robert's wheelchair ramp. When they tried to explain, Margaret told them illness isn't an excuse for bad aesthetics and suggested maybe they should consider assisted living if they couldn't maintain standards. Susan cried as she told me they paid the fine out of fear she'd try to have them evicted. And then Marcus Thompson, veteran EMT, works nights. Margaret fined him for parking his own car in his own driveway during the day, said it violated the spirit of HOA rules because most people are at work. She even tried to pass a rule banning cars between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., basically outlawing night shift workers. That's when we realized it wasn't just bullying, it was full-on abuse of power. 14 of us teamed up and hired a lawyer, William Haworth, specialist in HOA law. William flipped through our evidence, started laughing, said, "This is one of the worst cases I've ever seen." He filed for an emergency HOA meeting scheduled for Tuesday night. Margaret went on the offensive, firing off newsletters accusing troublemakers of destroying the neighborhood. But by now, Nobody was buying it. Tuesday night, the community center was packed, standing room only. Margaret sat at the head of the table, clutching her gavel knuckles wide opening with this long, self-righteous speech about leadership and sacrifice. William stood up cool as you please and started reading 23 false complaints in 18 months, missing fines totaling $16,000, clear discrimination against singles. People started shouting. Someone yelled that Margaret's nephew got $40,000 for pool maintenance, except we didn't even have a pool. Another neighbor pointed out that HOA purchased plants ended up in Margaret's own garden. Margaret snapped her gavel in half, shrieked that everyone would be fined for causing a disturbance. That's when I stood up and played the meltdown audio, her ranting about single men, admitting she stalked my travel schedule. The board didn't hesitate. They called a vote to remove her. Margaret screamed it was illegal, but William pointed out the bylaws allowed it in cases of criminal conduct. Vote came in 58-2, only Margaret and her friend Eleanor in her corner. Margaret tried to save face, claiming she was resigning anyway, but the board made it official. Within a week, the district attorney filed 18 counts against her, filing false reports, harassment, stalking. We filed a civil lawsuit for $400,000 in damages. Then the state stepped in and found Margaret had embezzled over $43,000 from HOA funds, most of it funneled through her nephew's fake company. At trial, her lawyer claimed she had a psychological condition obsessed with control. Prosecutor wasn't having it brought out emails where Margaret bragged to her sister about running out the undesirables and making a tidy profit. Forensic techs recovered her deleted personal journal. She'd rated each false complaint like Yelp reviews, even wrote noise violation 4 out of 5 stars. Should have made it drugs harder to disprove. Turns out 30% of every fine went into a hidden account, over $60,000 for her vacations, jewelry, even her mortgage. In the end, Margaret was found guilty on all counts. 3 years prison. 18 months served 5 years. Probation ordered to repay $36,000 plus another $220,000 in civil judgment. Lifetime ban from any HOA board plus 500 hours of community service working with single-parent families. And when the real estate board reviewed her conviction, they yanked her license for good. When the judge read the sentence, Margaret just stood there, mouth open, not a sound coming out. Then she collapsed into her chair, sobbing, saying she just wanted to keep the neighborhood safe. As the bailiff led her away, her helmet of gray hair fell across her face, and for the first time she looked small, defeated, just an old woman who'd spent her last ounce of power on the wrong fight. So, here's my question. What do you think is there ever a point where community standards go too far, or does justice always find its way home? Let me know down below. And hey, if you've ever faced down a petty tyrant or lived through a neighborhood power trip, drop your story in the comments. I bet you're not alone.